So here we are at the end of the day, and we've gathered some questions. We appreciate those of you who submitted questions. We probably won't get to all of them, but we want to walk through a few questions. And John, thanks for the extra step we're taking here to help wrap up the day. So
For sure.
there's some are lean towards the super practical, and some are a little bit broader. First one, I think this leans into the practical.
Okay.
And this came out of one of the groups, I think, had some great conversation in their group, and they're like, we'd love to hear John's thoughts on this. And that's, how do you teach people to pray? Are there resources that would be helpful? Is there a process that you've used in your church to teach people to pray?
Yeah, good question. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, I'm on it. Just immediately when I saw that one resource that came to mind, and I looked it up as Jack told me this question was going to get asked, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with Pete Greig. That's Greig with somebody, are like
some high fives in the
personal
back.
friends of Pete Greig? Oh, good. Yeah, well, Pete's with the Alpha folks, and he's got a great course, How to Pray course, and then his book is A Simple Guide for Normal People, which I love the title. How to Pray, A Simple Guide for Normal People by Pete Greig, Greig. I think it's a great tool, puts it in everyday language. And I don't know if this is from Pete or not. It might be. Those of you that know Pete personally at the back table there could tell me, but I know the outline that he uses is one that I've used that's helped me in my prayer and something I would use to train other people. It's just the Lord's Prayer, and it's adoration, intercession, petition, confession, and then spiritual warfare, and you just walk through the Lord's Prayer. You know, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. That's adoration. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's intercession. Give us this day our daily bread, petition. Forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. Or if you're on the trespass crowd, we can go with that too. That's confession. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. That's spiritual warfare. And so it's a really, I think, helpful way to help people learn how to pray. It's something, even if you're not a Christ follower, culturally still, most people have at least heard of the Lord's Prayer. And so I think it's a helpful tool. And I think, does anybody know, is that the...
It's his Lord's Prayer, the prayer course.
That's in the prayer course. That's how he uses that outline, right? Okay, yeah. So yeah, you can use the prayer course, which is from Alpha, or his book. Either way, it's really good stuff.
Awesome. And this one leans into similar, I think, angle on this, and that's, how do you mobilize a person or people to disciple like Jesus? That approach to building that discipleship into somebody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's how I would respond to that. And I mean, there's people here that could answer this question as well or better than me, I'm sure. But just the first thought that I had was, I think so often, you know, we make the mistake of equating discipleship with increasing someone's knowledge. It's very like didactic. Like if we can only help them know more, then they will become a fully devoted follower of Christ. And I think we know that's not the case. We've got more access to more knowledge than we've ever had, and I don't know that people are being discipled any better than they ever were, maybe worse. And so what you love about the life of Christ is it was life on life, right? He was with the disciples for 3 years. They spent time together, working together, eating together, playing together, right? Living together. And so we like to talk about discipleship as apprenticeship. And so we have kind of a 5-step model for apprenticeship that we use, and I'm sure we stole this from somebody else too. But it kind of goes like this. Step 1 is, and this is going to sound so basic, you're going to be like, I can't believe that he's giving this. This is so basic. But if you practice it, I think you'd be amazed that it has really a broad application. So step 1 is I do, you watch, we talk. And so whatever it might be in regards to discipleship, whatever you're wanting to help disciple somebody in, whether it's how to pray or how to study the Bible or how to lead a small group or how to, you know, bless your neighbors and friends, the first step is I do, you watch, we talk. I'm going to do it, Jack, you're going to watch me do it, and then we're going to get together and we're going to talk about what you saw, what we experienced together. Step 2 then is I do, you help, we talk. And in this scenario, I'm going to give Jack an opportunity to help me in whatever I'm trying to disciple him in. And then we're going to get together and talk about it. That's the most important part of the process, is that we talk, is that we always get together over a cup of coffee or a meal or breakfast, and we're talking about how this process is going, what you're experiencing. Then step 3 is you do, I help, we talk. All right. So now I'm kind of shifting it a little bit over. It's still a safe environment, but Jack's going to practice whatever I've been discipling him in, and I'm going to help him, and then we're going to get together and talk about it. And then it's you do, I watch, we talk. Now, Jack is hopefully moving right along in this discipleship process, this apprenticeship process, and he's, taking on more of this himself and really learning it, living it, experiencing it. And then the last one is you do, someone else watches. Yeah. And so it's not just discipling, it's actually disciple making, so that he's now in turn discipling somebody else. Very simple. I mean, there's so much more we could talk about in that, but we found that to be a really helpful model with broad application.
Yeah. And I want to emphasize, I've heard that a million times. I don't know if I've ever heard anybody emphasize the we talk part so much. I've always heard, I do, you watch, and then the next step is I do, you help, and that. And I've never heard that addition of then we talk about it. Like, that's such a critical piece to make sure you debrief, you have that feedback loop so you can find out what they're really seeing. Maybe they're not seeing all they need to see before you're ready to bring them to the next step.
Well,
so
and we talk is where it intersects with bless, because the we talk always goes better if you're having something to eat and breakfast or coffee or something like that. So, that's good.
All right. Here's one that's coming more from an angle of leadership in a church and how this could impact. So to implement the principles of B.L.E.S.S and to allow the margin to do so, if you're trying to create that culture, get the people in your congregation to live out B.L.E.S S, should churches consider cutting back on their programs to create space for people to have the margin to bless their neighbors?
I think the answer is yes. And I think you have to do some evaluating. Are your programs accomplishing the end? Are they resulting in more and more disciples being made? And I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what we're all about, right? And so if it's not, then I think you need to cut back on those anyway. But I also think we have to give people permission that when they're blessing their friends and neighbors, that counts. I mean, that's being on mission. And what they're accomplishing with those friends and neighbors outside of the four walls of our church is in large part of greater importance, at least equal, if not greater, than what's happening inside the four walls. Yeah. And so I think not only do we have to give them permission, we have to encourage it, we have to celebrate it, go back to that culture model of, if you value it, then you've got to have narrative, which is language and stories, and then you've got to have behaviors. If you really value it, you reward it, you platform it, you talk about it. You got to have stories of people doing it. If you're going to tell stories of people doing it, then you got to let them do it, and you've got to be doing it. And so absolutely, we've got to create margin. But I think as much as anything else, we just need to recognize that as vitally important to the ministry of the church, because that is what the church really is all about.
Remember when we started Compelled, one of the conversations we were having with the church, and I won't name the church, but they were talking about, they were going through a season as a church where they're like, we had to stop talking about serving at church and serving as the church, because all of the activities and programs were happening at the church, and trying to deliberately turn that outward, serve as the church, bless the community, and then recognizing that as individuals go out into their own neighborhoods, they're still serving as the church, and that's a step even further. Yeah. It's not just we're going to turn our programs outward, but we're going to release our people outward and say that is the life of the church when you're loving your neighbor, when you're hosting a barbecue in your front yard and loving on them.
Right, yeah, I mean, if the only stories that we're telling of people serving are stories of people serving within the four walls of our church, then we're sending a message. Well, that's what serving is really all about. That's what outreach is really all about. You as the pastor and as the leaders of your church need to be telling stories of people that are, serving by hosting a party in their block and inviting their neighbors, or, sharing the love of Christ with somebody that maybe has never yet walked through the walls of our church. So that's how I think this culture of B.L.E.S.S and of the kind of serving that we really want to see happen could actually occur long term.
And this one, maybe it feels like this may have come from a pastor. I'm not sure. It's just the word professional boundaries, ?
Yeah. Jack, what's the answer?
I was like, let's be careful how we word this, because we don't want to offend.
I was trying to decipher exactly what that might mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it could be sort of I think there is sometimes the idea, well, I'm so busy investing in, if you're a pastor, investing in my staff or, engagements that are out of town or message preparation or whatever it might be to, do the work of the church, which that is the work of the church. I'm not saying it's not. But I still feel like as leaders of leaders and leaders of leaders of leaders, we have to be living this out. And we've got to have stories to tell. Otherwise, you're going to become pretty irrelevant to the folks that you're asking to be out there actually doing it. And so, I lead a small group in my home every week. And those aren't leaders, they're not staff, they're, people that I'm just connecting with and trying to help disciple and become, followers of Jesus. I'm trying to live out those blessed practices in my neighborhood because I want to be able to encourage the people in our church and other people that, no, this isn't just something we talk about, this is something we actually do. And so I think the professional boundaries, quite frankly, is just overplayed sometimes. And I think part of the problem with the professional boundaries is that we elevate pastors to such a place that they don't even want to be, and it's not healthy. And we've seen the fallout from that, I think, with all the pastors that have, blown it and messed up over the past, decade. And I think the more we act like and realize and live like we're just like everybody else, we just have the privilege of, leading a staff and other people, then the better off I think the whole kingdom's going to be.
One of my favorite images of Jesus is the resurrected Jesus cooking fish.
Yeah.
To provide and care for the human needs of his followers.
Yeah, right on.
Like that I saw that story through new eyes a few years ago, and it just clobbered me. I was like, the resurrected Christ.
Right.
Cooked fish to feed his
good.
disciples
Really
and
good.
meet their needs. So
Any
of us need professional boundaries?
Say that? Yeah, right. No kidding. One of the upsides or downsides of starting and leading a church with your brother for so many years is, neither one of us can get by with any of that. Because, we've known each other so long. We know, the good and the bad and the ugly. And so if either one of us thinks we're something, then we can bring the other one down pretty quick. And we've got enough dirt on each other that, you got to stay humble.
One positive side of leading.
Right,
with
one
the
positive
sibling.
side, yeah, for sure.
There were a couple questions about telling your story and sharing your story, and maybe I'll throw them both out and let you pick one, or both.
Okay.
Let's see. So one was, how do you share your story and not get caught up in the political polarization of our culture? And if you want to avoid that question, you can talk about, as we share our story, how do we keep the story of God at the center?
Yeah.
And not make it all about us, I guess.
Right, yeah,
Part of what they're saying.
right. No, it's two good questions. Not falling into the political trap. I don't. It's a complete distraction, and you don't have to go there. I'm trying to think about how that would even be a part of my story. And so if our ultimate goal is to reach people for Christ, then tell your story and let somebody else hear your story maybe, and let them help you discern whether or not your story has a political bent that's not necessary. Because you don't know sometimes, right? We're our own worst enemies sometimes in that. And so I think when you're thinking about your story and you're sharing it before you share it with others, or you feel like you've got it down, I think it would be worthwhile. Hey, here's my story. Is there something in here that I'm not aware of? I'm not hearing it maybe the way somebody else would hear it. I think that's valuable, because the last thing you want to do is say something that puts an unnecessary barrier in someone's way of finding their way back to God and coming to know Jesus. And then the second question was...
keeping God's story at the center of
and
your
I feel
story.
like I got that question from a couple different people, and it's a great question. And I told somebody, I think if I had to write the book over, if we had to write it over, we'd put an appendix in there that was a little bit more clear. Okay, here is the gospel story. Now, I think the potential downside of that is that we forget how our story is a part of the gospel story, and how the gospel story is a part of our story. And we go back to this, if I just memorize the right verses, the Roman Road or Evangelism Explosion or Four Spiritual Laws, then I'll be able to convert this person, or they're going to have enough head knowledge that they're going to make a choice to follow Jesus. And so if your story doesn't include the gospel story, then you need to think about your story. Does that make sense? And then I think incorporating scriptures in a natural way that that fits with your story is absolutely powerful. I mean, let the Word of God speak for itself, right? And it will. It's powerful. It can, cut through people. There's a verse about that somewhere. So, yeah, if I had to do it over, I think I'd have an appendix that was a little bit more, explored that a little bit deeper, so that it's very clear that when we say share your story, that story includes the gospel story and how it's impacted you personally. Yeah.
All right. Well, and as we're wrapping up, I want to give you just a chance. Any final thoughts on the day, that super wisdom nugget that you were saving? I don't know if but just final thoughts.
Yeah, no, I got
words
nothing
of
left. That's it.
encouragement.
I'm done. It's over. I've told you everything I know. Now, I just want to affirm you and thank you for being here and your attention and your eagerness to learn and to understand and to spend an entire day just to talk about what it looks like to love our neighbors and friends and to literally change the world. And I mean, I really believe, if you take this with you and begin to live this out yourself, begin to get some stories and create some language around this, and as a leadership team say, you know what, we're going to draw a line in the sand and put a stake in the ground and say, no more just like talking about what we want people to do. We're going to give them specific ways they can actually go out. I think you'd be amazed how people latch onto this because it's simple, it's memorable. People can look at it and go, you know what, I can do that. I can do that. And I think it really could transform how we are sending people to be on the most important mission on the planet. So thanks a lot.